Hey scholars, so our math lesson for the day is going to be Module 4, Lesson 29, and the objective, what we're trying to learn how to do today, is figure out how to divide a number by unit decimals. Unit decimals, by the way, just means something that's equivalent to a tenth or a hundredth. So, right, 1/10 or 1/100th, right? So we already know how to divide by fractions. We've been doing that. So now all we're doing is we're taking that knowledge and we're doing it to figure out how to divide the same number by a decimal. So we're going to go through 3 quick problems that will hopefully help you as you go through your Zern lesson for Module 4, Lesson 29. So the first thing that it says, the first problem we're going to be dealing with is 5 divided by 0.1, which is the same as, that's 5 divided by, remember that if we think about our place value chart, right, that this would be tens, I'm just going to do tens, this would be ones, or 1 whole unit. Right here is where our decimal would go. Let's see if I can make a decimal there. And then here is where our tenths would go, 0.1, right? And this is tenths right here, right? I don't like this. Excuse me. How would I do that? Whatever. 0.1, we're just going to have to deal with that random line up there. This is tenths. Tenths. Right? And that is the same as, when I think about tenths, what I think about is 1/10, right? And we know how to do that. We know how to divide 5 by 1/10. But I want you to think about it the way that it's showing us here, where it says, and by the way, if you are confused by how to do this, please go back and look at previous lessons on YouTube. They are all there, and we go into how we would divide something like this. But here what it's asking you to do is it's asking you to break down the problem into parts. The first thing it says is there are blank tenths in 1 whole. So let's make 1 whole. Here's my whole, and if I were to break it into tenths, then I would have to break it into 10 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and here's 10. So how many tenths are in 1 whole? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So if I just had 1 whole, if I was just dividing 1, by the way, these are the same, right? I just want to point that out really quickly. But if I were just dividing 1 whole into tenths, I would get 10 wholes because, or 10 tenths, excuse me, 10 tenths because there are 10 tenths in 1 whole. But instead of that, this is saying, well, how many tenths would be in 5 wholes? Well, if this is 1, then if I had a second one, I would have another 10 tenths, right? Or 20 tenths in total. Let me redo that so it's approximately the same length, right? And so on and so forth. So that if I had 5 of these, I would end up not with just 10 tenths, but 50 tenths, because for every 1 whole, I will have 10 tenths. So since there are 50 tenths in 1 whole, if I were to divide 5 divided by 1/10, I would end up with 50, right? I would have 50 groups of tenths. So here, when it's asking for my answer, 5 divided by 1/10, the answer is 50. I have 50 tenths. All right? So please, as always, let me know if you have questions about that. Let's go to our next problem. All right? So the next problem is very similar. But instead of it just being 5, here it's saying, oh no, don't do that. Excuse me. Here it says that I have 5.2 tenths, right? So again, here, and what do I want to do? I want to break it into, divide means break it into equal groups of 1/10. So again, if I had 5 of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, then again, if for 5 wholes, if I were breaking it into 1/10, let me do a different color. If I were breaking it into 1/10, then each one of these would be broken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and here's 10. So if I had just one whole, it would be 10 tenths. 10 0.1s, 10 tenths in one whole. Since I have 5 wholes, there would be 10 here, 10 here, 10 here, 10 here, and 10 here. So again, if I'm breaking 5 wholes into tenths, I'm going to end up with 50 tenths. But that's not what this question is asking. This question is asking about 5.2. So for this 0.2, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another whole, but I'm not going to care about the whole whole. I only care about 2 of them. So again, 1, 2, I'm going to break this whole into tenths because that's what we're working with. The unit we're working with is tenths. But I'm going to break it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and here's 10. But since it's only asking, I already did, in the light blue, I already did my 5. Now I'm looking about this 0.2, which is only 2 pieces of this. So it's only 1, 2. So how many more tenths are there? Well, it's only 2 tenths because the whole thing is still made out of 10 tenths, but I'm only caring about 2 of them. So how many tenths are in 2 tenths? It's almost redundant. There are 2 tenths in 2 tenths, right? And so then how many are there in all, in 5.2? Well, it's all of the 50 from the 5 wholes, and then it's another 2 from the 2 tenths. So it's going to be that there are 52 tenths in 5.2. In other words, if I have 5.2 and I break it into pieces of 1/10, and the question is, how many, division means how many equal units of 1/10 will I get out of this 5.2? The answer is I will get 52 equal units of 1/10, right? And that is what this whole thing is telling me, all right? So now we're going to move on to our last question, which is similar but a little different. And the reason it's a little different is because we're no longer dealing with tenths. Here, we're dealing with hundredths. Here, it's asking me about hundredths. So if I had, and I'm not going to do this because this would take a very, very, very long time, but if I had one whole and I wanted to break it into 100 pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4, right, 5, all the way down until I broke it down and I had 100 pieces. The question is, how many pieces would I have? I would have, in one whole, I would have 100 hundredths. But how many holes do I have here? I have 8 holes. So if in one hole there's 100 hundredths, in 2 holes there would be 200 hundredths, in 3 holes 300 hundredths, and so on. So in 8 holes I would have 800 hundredths. Or in other words, if I take 8 and I divide it into equal pieces of 100th, how many pieces would I get? I would get 800 pieces. All right, so I hope that this helped you with understanding our objective of being able to divide a number by a unit decimal, right? And as always, any questions that you have, please feel free to ask. I have office hours for that. You can also comment on the Google Classroom. You can message me on ClassDojo, whatever works for you. I am here. I love you. I miss you. And I hope to see you very soon during one of our community meetings. Bye, scholars.